Hi, and welcome. I'm Ford for Caterpillar Cross Stitch, and this week I'm going to be sharing with you some tools that I use wrong when I use them for cross stitch. Now before we go any further, do me a favor for just a second. Hit subscribe on the channel, hit like on the video, go down and leave me a comment. If you've learned anything from me, it's a really great way for you to pay me back. It makes a big difference for me and it doesn't cost you anything other than a couple seconds, so I'd appreciate it if you'd do that. Now obviously I'm just being a little bit cheeky when I say that I'm using these tools wrong. What I mean is that I'm using them in a way that they weren't really intended or designed to be used. Obviously they're not meant for cross-stitching, but I found really useful things about them. So I'm going to go over a few of those, and you may already have them lying around your house and just not thought to use them this way, or maybe you're smarter than me and you've been doing it for forever. So let's start with this one. And this is probably the most specialized tool that I use for something besides its intended purpose, and it's this pair of precision calipers here. You can get these pretty inexpensively at a hardware or tool store. And I use them for quite a number of different things. One, to measure my frames when I'm doing framing so that I can get a precise measurement, that kind of stuff. But when actually doing stitching, I found a really tremendous use for them. And that is in particular when I'm gridding. It makes it a lot easier if I can just count my 10. I count out my 10 stitches, and I can open up my calipers to the size of 10 stitches, and I can lock them in place. And then I only have to count once. Then I can line the point of that up with that hole, and that'll be 10. And then I can just line that up with the next hole, and that will be 10. Makes it a lot easier and faster to grid. It also makes it easier for me to determine when I'm buying a piece of fabric if it's actually square, because I can count 10 one direction, measure it, count 10 in the other direction, and measure that as well. So I can make sure that it's perfectly square weave so that my project won't wind up distorted. Now, I'll take just a second right now to remind you to join the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Stitch Club newsletter. When you sign up for the email, you'll get periodic blasts about all the latest up-and-coming projects and exciting announcements from Caterpillar Cross Stitch. For instance, if there's a new Stitch Along coming out or a new Stitch Retreat or something like that, you'll be the first to know. So make sure you hit the link down there in the description so that you don't miss any of those exciting new projects coming up. The next one is something that I've talked about quite a few times, and I always keep it in my project box, and that is a quality pair of tweezers. These are extremely useful for frogging when I need to pull stitches, and especially some of those fibers that get left behind in the fabric. They're also really good because I have a dog and a bird and a bunny rabbit, and so I get some exotic fibers in my projects, and these are really useful for pulling those out. And the next one is a little bit closer to its intended purpose because it at least is an art supply or craft project supply, and that is a light table. I actually got this one at a yard sale for like $2, but you can get them relatively inexpensively, even new. And in order to be able to use it on the go with me, I can run it for hours off of just this little simple phone battery pack. But that will provide a backlit surface, and there are a lot of things that I actually use this for when cross-stitching. The first is anytime I'm stitching on black fabric, I will turn this on at the lowest setting and I will set it behind my project. It makes all of the little holes in the fabric so much easier to see, and it makes stitching a lot faster and easier. Another way I'll use this is if I'm framing a project, especially if I'm going to be framing it to display in a hoop. It can be really hard to see that you've got your hoop centered over your design so that it will give you a nice evenly balanced display. But if you have a light table, it's really easy to see when you've got the hoop positioned correctly under your project. So it's removes some of that trial and error, especially since pressing the hoop on there frequently creases or wrinkles the fabric, and then you have to start all over with ironing. So this can save a lot of trouble when it comes to setting it up to be displayed in a hoop, because you're already able to see where the hoop is going to fall. And I cannot overstate the value of having a community that shares your interests. The Caterpillar Cross Stitch community that has grown up around the brand, especially in the Facebook group and in the following of the Instagram feed, is an amazing, creative, resourceful, and supportive community. And I just can't overstate how important it is. So just go hit the links down there. Make sure you check both of those out. For the next one, we're going to go back to the hardware store, and that is a quick release clamp. I most frequently use this in conjunction with my lap stand because I can use it to clamp the lap sitting portion of my lap stand onto my chair. And that way it will stay in the same place all the time. And in particular, if I'm doing any process videos or recording a video of my stitching to put it on YouTube or on another social media, the clamp plus the lap stand keeps it perfectly stationary, and it makes it a lot easier to edit all those together later. It also means that whenever I get up, it'll just stay right where it is if I'm stitching, so it stays nicely situated. You can even actually use this just to clamp a hoop to the edge of a table so that it will stay in place while you're stitching, so you can use both hands if you don't happen to have a stand. And the last one is again one that I have mentioned quite a few times here, something that I always have in my project bag, because if I'm stitching, I'm probably also snacking. And some of the things I like to snack on are brightly colored or covered in cheese dust, for instance. So I like to carry a pair of chopsticks with me at all times so that I can eat without getting my project greasy or without having to constantly go and wash my hands. So that's one of my favorite things that I use for cross-stitching that obviously not its intended purpose. Now those are some of my favorite tools that I'm using wrong when I use them for cross-stitching. What about you? Is there something that you have that clearly wasn't intended for fiber arts, but that you're using that way and getting some great use out of? Share your knowledge down there in the comments, and maybe I'll add something to my own personal kit. Other than that, I do want to thank you so much for watching. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and I will see you next week.